Happy Saturday, and thank you for tuning into this episode of the Leadoff on the Peak One Sports Network. As you can see, we are not on camera today. It just figures the 1 week, or the first week we decide to go to 9 o'clock, change our time up. None of our stuff wants to work, so...
It's giving me back to our podcasting days, how we started vibes, man. No video.
I feel
audio.
Weird. I feel like Ricky Bobby. I don't know what to do with my hands right now.
Yeah.
I usually talk.
We feel like we have to be put on for the camera, and we try to, be presentable.
I wore my nice hat for my new sponsor, which we'll get to in a minute. But yeah, thank you for listening to us. Really, just listening to us. If you thought we were ugly, this is your episode to watch or listen to, however you're listening. How about that? Game 1 last night.
Man, this World Series, we kind of thought this was a nice even match between these two teams, really young teams, hot offenses. Man, that was a hell of a game last night to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it was exciting to watch the Astros-Rangers go to Game 7, but none of the games were really all that close, except Game 5 here in Arlington, but it was the first extra inning games of the postseason. A lot of fireworks, which, we'll definitely get into because we have a lot to get to. But first, hit that subscribe button if you're not subscribed to our channel. If you like us, hit the like button. If you don't, hit it twice. And this episode is brought to you by a couple of sponsors. First of all, let's go ahead and talk about Betalytics. Everybody's heard about it. Everybody knows if you're listening. If you haven't, Betalytics. We use Betalytics. Don't bet with your gut. Use Betalytics. They use AI algorithms, get player props, projections, all kinds of great stuff. They basically do game simulations and figure out who's going to do what and what you're supposed to bet. They have a great success rate. So go to Betalytics.com. Use promo code PEAK1 for 25% off. When you sign up today. Another sponsor, as I mentioned, I have their hat, but you can't see it right now because our cameras aren't working, so you just have to go check them out. Shank It Golf, one of our new sponsors. Basically golf apparel. You can get polos, hats, quarter zips, golf clubs. Golf bags, not clubs. Gloves, all kinds of cool stuff. And
this isn't your dad. This isn't your dad's golf company.
No, very apparel. Laid back. My hat is, what does it say? It says Legalize Mulligans, but it's in a font. It kind of looks like a sponsored hat. It looks like a real golf hat. There's all kinds of cool different funny laid back sayings.
Very edgy golf apparel.
Yeah, no joke. There's some I'm not going to talk about all of them depending on who's listening, but there's some inappropriate type hats too as well that are kind of funny, which you wouldn't even know.
Yeah.
I showed my wife.
They look like one of the other the golf brands.
Yeah, and I showed my wife when she's like, "What?" And I said, "Read what it says." And she's like, "Oh, I did not know."
You just think it was the golf brand that that you see.
If you see legalize and a word that starts with M, you don't think that's going to say Legalize Mulligans. And it's just a really cool brand. You can go to their website. Go to the description box and click on a referral link and use promo code PEAK1 and you'll get 10% off when you place
orders. That's a great deal.
Yeah, it took about 3 days to get this hat in. We noticed some people have been using that referral code. Thank you to y'all, everybody who's doing that. So just go check them out. And today we already talked a little about World Series. Let's just jump back into World Series. Adolis Garcia just continues to grow his legend.
El Bombi, El Bombo, El MVP. Like, dude, this guy is for real. He is him.
Yeah,
no doubt about it. He there's no hangover from ALCS for him. What did he had? 3 singles leading up to that,
and it seemed kind of boring. He's not really doing much. Although he got on base before that home run, had gotten on base 4 times, had a couple of RBIs, or 1 RBI, tying the record for most RBIs in a single postseason until he hit walk-off homer. Now, in
the 11th inning.
In the 11th inning, I understand extended playoffs records. Records are going to be broken. You can say this or that, but it's early in. So if you go by games, I don't know how many games whose record did he break? Most RBIs. I can't remember.
Somebody from the Cardinals.
So you can go by games because they didn't play up until Game 7. They had swept Baltimore. They had swept Tampa Bay. So they'd only played 5 games, 12. This is his 13th game. So that's not a ton of games to break the record because it's just Game 1 of the World Series.
Yeah.
And people will say that, but they change rules to sports all the time, expand. When Babe Ruth, they were playing like 120 something games.
Yeah.
They expanded to 162.
So obviously you
This
expect
happens
records to be broken.
Yeah, records are going to be broken. That doesn't mean he's the best RBI hitter in MLB postseason history.
But it also still doesn't change the fact that he broke a record. That was the record, regardless of how many games that was in and what context you put it in. That was a standing record, and that record was broken. And if it was just as simple as, well, they're playing more games, why is it not broken every single year? Yeah. This isn't a record that's broken every year.
And it just goes to show, it's not nothing that he just did. And he's hit a home run, down 5 straight postseason games.
Yeah.
He's hit, I think, 12 in his last 20, maybe 21 games. Forget postseason. That's good in general, but now just emphasize it's in the postseason, higher pressure, better pitchers.
Yeah.
Bigger situations, and he hasn't, with all the booing from Astros fans to high pressure situations, he hasn't shied away from the pressure, and he's performed great.
Yeah.
And Corey Seager, who made it possible. Hitting the game-tying 2-run home run in the bottom of the 9th. I know for a while it was looking kind of bad. The Rangers get out early, give up the lead. It just goes back and forth. And then for the last, since the 5th inning, they were just down 2 runs. They got a couple of people on base a couple of times and just left them hanging. And then the bottom of the 9th, Corey Seager comes through, ties the game. Then you go.
Well, that was something that in our pre-show meeting that Landen brought up. The fact is that Seager home run might even be more meaningful to this game and this series and this team than Adolis.
It broke it open. Go ahead.
That home run from Seager showed what he did in Arlington was 2 years ago when the stadium first opened. They held the playoffs here, showed what he did whenever he won World Series MVP. It showed the true playoff Corey Seager that he can be.
Yeah.
And I think you don't see emotion from him ever. We saw it in Game 7 against the Astros, and then again last night. It's truly one of those things where he just kind of got his team going. He knew what he had to do in that moment after hitting the home run.
Yeah, he might be one of the most, how would you put it, selfless players. Maybe in the league, but for sure on this team. You're right. You mentioned before, too, that he doesn't want to talk about himself. He'll get on a mic and start talking about Adolis or Simeon or anyone, Evan Carter, but you very rarely will hear him say anything even about himself.
Yeah. Which is good because you see all those guys in their interviews. I know I'll watch the game after to see what they have to say on the interviews, and they're all asking him about Adolis, and then they ask Adolis about Seager. And everybody just has nothing, there's nothing bad that anybody says about each other. As the whole team is kind of really grouping together to build themselves up.
Yeah, I think the outside narrative is that Adolis is kind of the bad guy, like a Draymond Green type or whatever, which I can get that. Playoffs can get intense, and when the other, David Freese, I can't stand. I know nothing about. Honestly, I can't even tell you what he looks like anymore. I can't tell you what he sounds like. But because 2 times he beat the Rangers, the Rangers had the lead. We're going to win the World Series back in 2011. I think both times in extra innings and in the 9th inning, he hit the game tying or go ahead runs.
Yeah.
And so I get that intensity. I don't like David Freese. Nothing against David Freese at all. That's just what. And now you put Adolis Garcia. Gets hit by a pitch, and nobody even thinks anything about Adolis Garcia. He hit a couple of home runs early in the ALCS, but he wasn't thrusted on the stage in this role until he got hit by a pitch and then kind of turned around and started talking smack, and then he gets put he's a bad guy or a bad boy, whatever terminology you want to use. And now every time he does something, it's kind of it's not he's a good player. Evan Carter, Corey Seager, it's put on a magnifying glass because I don't know how many people would hate him. I think outside of Houston, not many, but Houston wants to see not only the Rangers lose, but they want to see Garcia strike out a bunch.
Is what we're seeing with this team so much about the team, or is this the Bochy effect?
I mean, it's got to be Bochy because that's the main difference. I mean, you got Corey Seager and Marcus Semien, and they improved by was like 20-something games, nearly, which is surprising. You don't look at the roster and say this is how many wins. You go, this is how many wins they had last year, and you go wins above replacement. You add here, you should only get that. And I think they doubled the expected amount of wins they should have gotten, or not doubled the wins, but the improvement, how many wins they were going to improve to, and then obviously blew it out of the water this year because, I mean, their big signing like DeGrom, he didn't pitch right. I mean, they went and got
Could you imagine if you still had DeGrom, if DeGrom was healthy in this situation with this? I mean,
you have
of course you don't get to
starter.
see. I mean, you don't get to see Montgomery and you wouldn't have Scherzer probably, maybe not Montgomery either, but Montgomery's a big piece too. That's a trade deadline.
Yeah,
that may looking back that's their biggest.
Yeah,
that's their biggest move right now. I mean, of course Scherzer can go out and shut them out in game 3 or just and then that. But Montgomery's come in like 4 different times.
Came out of the bullpen.
Yeah. So I think he's pitched 5 games in this, and he's 3.
I think technically it is 5 games because he came out of the bullpen too.
So he's had 5 appearances,
like 2 innings or something. So
I mean, Scherzer would have to come out and just like.
But doesn't it just feel like this team, like you knew it was going to be a situation like this where every starter was going to make sure they were available. They would come out of the pen if they had to. Like you knew finishing out that Astros series, the ALCS, that this team, they were going to do anything they had to win that series. Yeah, and I think they're going to do anything they have to win this series.
Yeah, in Game 7, the only pitcher not in the bullpen was Eovaldi, who pitched the day before. He pitched like 6 or 7 innings the day before.
But I could have really have seen
he's going to pitch tonight.
I could really have seen if it would have come down to it that he would have come out of the bullpen if he had to.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to see different pitchers maybe that haven't pitched at all in the postseason, possibly tonight because going extra innings, they used a lot of pitchers. I think Arizona probably took the brunt. Yeah, because they used most of their. I don't have the numbers of how many pitch. I'm sure a lot of those guys are still available, especially after a few days.
I mean, I don't know if they pitched more than an inning each, but that's an inning extra that you have. You've already seen the pitch. You've already seen the pitcher.
Yeah, that's the big piece to it. When you've already seen these pitchers,
because you've only played them one other
tomorrow
time.
You get to see them again, and then the next day, when
or I guess 3.
That's what I
one other series.
In the ALCS, to the broadcast from last night, you hear it that it's this guy's first time facing this dude in his career.
Yeah.
So you just you have no.
Well, you saw it in
you don't know anything about him.
In the ALCS, you saw it when you were seeing Abreu come in every night. Well, eventually the Rangers really caught up to him, and he wasn't effective.
Well, we saw it against us with Leclerc and Altuve. Altuve saw Leclerc so much that he hit the point where you couldn't really throw him anything if Leclerc was on the mound because it was going to be a home run.
Yeah, he knew what was coming.
So obviously that reason as well is you're going to probably see more, from the Rangers side, maybe Perez
mix it up. Yeah.
You saw, let's see, Leclerc came in there for a couple
We also
innings.
have Chapman for tonight who didn't pitch.
You didn't pitch Chapman. You pitched Bradford, but he only went a shutout inning. So you usually after extra innings, you're kind of worrisome, but the other team did the exact same thing. I mean,
and really in extra innings, you used Leclerc, so we didn't have to go real deep.
And John Gray pitched a little bit too.
Yeah, so Leclerc's probably not available for tonight. He probably could be because he's used to pitching.
He typically comes in closing games. I mean,
he comes
it's
in
2 innings.
Yeah, usually he comes in and does the last 4 anyways. They'll have for Chapman, they would have a tighter rope on him, and Leclerc would come in with 4 outs to go. So given that they're going to be off tomorrow, I mean, of course you're not going to hold him back when you could pitch him.
Yeah.
Depending on the situation, but it may be different.
Well, I thought with the big thing for the Rangers, and as we saw, what is this? Only their second home postseason win this year.
This
year's their second. is that they really
like their
needed
fourth ever.
that they and this sounds funny is that they really needed to steal a game at home. Because I feel very confident about this team on the road, and I think they feel confident on the road. It was more worrisome at home for whatever reason.
Against Arizona, I mean, nothing against Arizona. They're not. I mean, same thing with Texas. They're not the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Phillies, like we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Until you're in this situation over and over and over again, your fans aren't. Fans were great last night, and then if Arizona's playing good, their fans are going to be great. But it's easier to take the fans out of it against Arizona. Again, I mean, you didn't have to take the fans out of it. In Tampa, they weren't really ever in it.
Yeah.
I mean,
But of course, they did great in Baltimore. Baltimore
and Houston, they kind of went in, and the environment didn't really change. So you wonder how, like, a team that, like, recently, like, in my memory, I haven't really remembered the Diamondbacks ever being good.
Yeah.
So you don't know how those fans react. Obviously,
both of these
they've
teams
been to the
since
World
the early
Series
2000s, they won the World Series in 2001.
But Arizona, a couple of years ago, the same boat as the Rangers. They lost over 100 games 2 years ago.
Which I think is what makes this series seem so much more evenly matched. Is they 2 years ago, both of these teams were in the same boat. They've built back. They are very similar with their offense.
Both really young teams.
Yeah. So I think it's going to make for a good series. I think we're going to continue to see. I don't know that we're going to see any huge blowouts. I think this is going to be a really tight match series, and we're gonna see fun, just like with the ALCS with the Rangers and the Astros. Like you said, there was one game maybe that was tight. The rest of them were blowouts one way or another.
Yeah.
And while that's fun when it's your team, on the positive side of that, it doesn't make for fun. You know, especially in a World Series, you don't want to see blowouts. You want to see it tight, down to the race, 6 or 7 games to decide a winner. And I think that decides a true winner when you go. If you sweep them in 4, I don't know that that's saying you're a true winner. The other team maybe was just at a disadvantage by how they managed, and I want to see it go to 7 games. I want to see these teams go to battle and spin up everything they have left to come up with a champion.
Yeah, see true, the managers playing chess, figuring out. And I think that's
ultimately
ultimately
the
what the
closest thing that we
Rangers.
saw to that was against Houston.
Yeah, that's what I think Bochy.
And I think that's what happened in Game 7. I think Bochy outplayed
Dusty, who just retired too.
Yeah.
Dusty did.
Which isn't surprising. He had a great career.
Yeah.
That wasn't a surprising thing.
The Astros are kind of starting to go on the downturn.
There's a lot of things. They're going to have a lot of off-season moves. Here in the next couple of years, this Astros team's probably going to look
pretty similar to they did
different.
a couple years ago.
Yeah, they'll look drastically different. Now, depending on the moves they make, will depend on.
Altuve only has 1 year left. It's kind of, I don't know that they're even thinking about, possibly trading him.
Is it Bregman as well? Only has 1 year.
Yeah. So
I think Bregman will
they
probably
could
resign. He's a little bit
re-sign
younger
him.
than Altuve.
Yeah, they could re-sign him. But it's interesting if they get off to another slow start like they did this year. Of course, Altuve was hurt. Depending on how bad that start is, you just say, "Hey, let's rip the Band-Aid off, start this, get a lot of picks back or a lot of prospects back for a couple of these guys."
Yeah, because that's
I don't think they're
with
there
Houston
yet. But
I think they've spent up their prospects. They don't look good in the farm system.
But as we said, how great this team looks now that Bochy's the manager, Baker's not the manager. Who knows how that could go?
Yeah.
Basketball is just now starting. A couple of games in for most of the teams. We saw the Mavericks, and we'll get to Luka in a second, play the Spurs opening with Wembanyama, who had an okay start last night.
Who finally did when Wembanyama got his first. Spurs got their first win last night.
Yeah, Wembanyama, ridiculous, like 37 points, 16, 17 rebounds. I don't remember how many blocks he finished with, but I remember seeing, I think there was a play, he had almost 3 blocks. He blocked it. The same guy got it back. He turned around, blocked it again, which we expected. There's bets going on how long it'll take him, how long it'll take him to go a season breaking the blocked 3-pointers record, which is a kind of weird record, but he can play perimeter defense, and he's so tall and he's got long arms that he can almost be in the be down in the key, take 2 steps, and probably block a 3-pointer.
Yeah.
So he's gonna. I think he's gonna be in his career. Like he's overhyped where it's almost impossible to live up the hype. Not overhyped because he's not that guy, but I heard people say if he's not Kevin Durant, or if he turns out into Kevin Durant, it's a disappointing career. Which
I don't believe.
There's no way you can. It's just too overhyped, and I think in comparison would be like Steven Strasburg, who they said he was going to be the best pitcher. History of it, had a great start to his career, dealt with injuries, but really, if you look back, he had a Hall of Fame career, very great career. But in your mind, you're like, that's kind of a disappointing career, maybe because a lot of the injuries and stuff. But I think he's gonna be top 10, maybe even top 5 blocks. I think he's gonna be a top if he plays long enough. He's got a weird, very tall and skinny,
and you'll see how
prone to injury maybe.
How teams start. I was gonna say that how teams start to play him once they figure out his game is, do they try to get some of the bigs beating up on him and wearing him down in a game, not just injury wise, just fatigue wise. When you've got a guy that, even though you're a foot taller than him and long, but he's got 50 pounds on you. That's tough. That's going to wear you out, having to bang down in the blocks.
Looking at Yao Ming, I mean, going against Shaq, and really, you don't think Yao Ming.
And Yao Ming wasn't a small guy. He wasn't a super thin guy. I mean,
no, he's
compared to Shaq,
5 inches taller than Shaq.
I mean, Shaq at his height. I think I just recently saw this that Shaq said, because every year he would continue. Everyone's trying to get him bigger and stronger and bigger. And his final championship year with the Lakers, he was at 415. Is what he was playing at.
Now the heaviest guy in the NBA is 300 pounds.
Yeah. Yao Ming's probably up there. I've seen pictures of him because he's gained some weight big, too. He's 7.
But could you imagine that size just banging against you all night long for an hour straight in a game? And then having to turn around in a series and do it night after night after night.
Especially tall and skinny like Wembanyama is.
Powerful, yeah.
He's young. Maybe he'll put on some weight and realize that because, playing in France, it's not quite the same.
It's a more finesse
it's not the
game.
level, yeah, exactly. You're not having the same size, and I mean maybe it'll help him that he's not always playing down. Like he can, on defense it's hard to tell because he's going to be playing against the big guy anyways, and they can kind of control that. But if you can keep him out of the post and out, playing that perimeter. Keep him more out of the perimeter where that doesn't happen. Maybe you can protect him a little bit because he can play out in the perimeter, and it's players like obviously Shaquille O'Neal doesn't play anymore, but it's hard for those big guys to get out to the perimeter and come back in to go. He can whip that around and do the finesse game on them and tire them out because they can't keep running back and forth.
Yeah,
they're gonna have to more play a zone defense.
Teams are gonna have to shift on him.
But if you don't have the 7 foot 6'11" guy who's already 4 or 5 inches shorter than him, then you're gonna go. What are you gonna put Kyrie Irving on when he comes out? You're gonna have to. The Mavericks took care of him just fine, but at a certain point, they'll figure out his game and he'll adjust. He'll adjust appropriately. Yeah. Going back to the Mavs, they played Brooklyn last night. Flipping back and forth between the World Series and the Mavericks. And Luka looked good.
He looks very
good.
49 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists.
Yeah.
Or maybe I have those back.
No, it's 10. I think it was
10 rebounds. Right. And then basically like his last 4 shots were all threes. Probably within the last points the Mavericks scored. Did he score the last 4 shots?
I think so.
Banking it off on the game-winning shot.
In a possession that he had to dish the ball off twice in that possession because he couldn't get a shot off. Gets it kicked back out to him, and then double teamed.
He just refuses to. It's like, okay, it's interesting because you have Kyrie. You're like, hey, if Luka gets doubled, give it to Kyrie, and that's probably plan C in that play. But Luka's saying, I want the ball. We're going to do everything we can. If depending on what they give us, if I just can't get open, Kyrie can be the next option. But I think it's clear that when they got Kyrie, they're like, well, who's going to handle the ball? This is stupid. This is a stupid move. And then it was kind of the exact opposite. There was a couple of games where they were just like, no, They're passing it back
Yeah.
and forth, and then they couldn't get the shot off.
Yeah,
And now I think it's pretty clear whose team this is. This is clearly Luka's team. I guess Kyrie seems fine with that. I don't know. You'll find out if he doesn't.
that was the question when they made this trade: is would Kyrie be okay with it? It was hard to tell. They didn't get a lot of game action together last season. With Luka was hurt a lot towards the end of the season, so it'll be interesting to see.
And Luka had an injury
because
going
that's
into the
been-
season. We didn't think he was even going to start this
Yeah,
season.
that was Kyrie's. It has been his big thing in his career is he willing to play second fiddle to somebody, and that typically hasn't been him when he was with LeBron.
I mean,
got out.
he did with LeBron for a while, and I think it was more of a thing that he kind of wanted to go prove himself. So he went to Boston, played for the pretty young Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. Played okay with that team, and then got traded back to Brooklyn, and then they created their team.
He's never really been the guy. I mean, not in a winning situation. He was the guy in Cleveland before LeBron came back.
Yeah.
Probably the guy in Boston when he first started. And then whatever reason that just didn't work out. And then Brooklyn,
That whole thing.
I feel like
shit show.
Kevin Durant was the main guy there. James Harden probably put up
James
some
Harden
stats
barely
before.
played through that season, though.
Yeah, it was hard because it was like a season and a half with all three, and
Yeah.
it was a ridiculous stat, like only 30 or 40 games where all three of them played.
I think if Kyrie can understand his role and understand that he is a superstar in this league and he does have a superstar role on this team, but again, it is Luka's team and the ball will run through Luka, but Luka's not a selfish player either. Luka puts the team on his back when he needs to, but you've never seen him be a selfish player or ever heard any of his teammates say he was a selfish player. They understand that they're playing with greatness. And they're going to find their role. And if Jason Kidd can put these players in a position where they all know their role, this for sure is a playoff team and possibly a championship team.
Yeah, I mean, you can't be selfish when you have 13 assists, 12 rebounds.
Yeah.
you're
Yeah,
also
that's
putting up
why
50
when they
a
say
game.
he's a ball hog. He's like you can get a number of assists, but if you watch the Mavericks, especially last year, I was like, man, Lucas should have had 5-6 more assists per game. Look, I understand they're not going to make every shot. It's not Lucas' fault necessarily, but there was someone he made this outrageous behind the back pass, and they just couldn't hit down the shot.
So that's the situation he is put in. And then you look at it as like, well, he has all these points. He's a ball hog. No, he's going to win a game because he knows if he dishes it off, the likelihood of a teammate making that shot is lower than his. He's going to go take that shot. He's going to go
and a
put
lot
the
of
team on
it
his
is
back.
if you're making those ridiculous passes, then where he drives at the last second, dishes it out behind the back, no look passes. Now as a defender, you can't just fully commit to him. If you don't fully commit when he's driving, it's a lot easier for him to get in the lane because Luka's not a small guy. He looks kind of small compared to other guys, but he's 6'7". I don't even know how much he weighs, but obviously high 200s. I would assume being that tall.
Yeah, I mean, Kyrie is that missing piece I think that he needed, is another star when they do double him and they do put the pressure on him and they play. It's hard to play defense against those two guys. They can help spread the floor a little more for Luka. And if Luka's having an off night or something, he's being doubled, he can't get in a situation, you've got Kyrie that can step up and do that.
Yeah, and Lively looks pretty good too. You thought that rookie first round pick, that maybe it'd be a couple of years before he was ready, but first couple of games he looks pretty good. It looks like he may it may be a really good role player this year, possibly before too long, rather than waiting for a few years. Obviously coming from Duke. World Series game 2 tonight. What else we got coming up? Some key college football games.
Colorado at UCLA, Oregon, BYU. Not Oregon, BYU, Texas, BYU. Who's Oregon playing?
Ohio
Utah.
State is on the road. Utah and Oregon.
That's a good matchup.
Oregon's
Oregon,
gonna be
Utah,
good, yeah.
BYU, Texas.
Oregon, Utah might be
Something that's
your Pac-12 champion. One of those might be, the winner of this be your
I
team
like
in
the
the
Texas
Pac-12. Because are they
BYU
both
matchup too?
So Pac-12, is it North and South divisions? I think it is.
it's
And
the same.
Utah played USC in the championship the last couple of years, so I assume Oregon and Utah are in the same, so they can't play in the Pac-12 championship. So this might be basically who USC is going to play. I don't know. USC's looking like they just lost to Utah last week. I don't know. And
What is
Colorado,
the
Florida,
big story?
Georgia, SEC
Florida,
matchup.
Georgia,
Florida,
that's
Georgia.
going to be a good
The
one.
big story this week in college football, though, is number 2 Michigan, and their coaching.
Controversy, sign stealing.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody steals signs. Every
Well,
sport does
they
it.
had guys at games where all they did was film the sidelines to see in certain situations. You do. I don't know that it's as egregious as the Astros and banging on trash
I mean, that's
cans,
like the
but,
Bill Belichick thing. They had people.
but they got in
doing
trouble for that.
plays.
He got in trouble for that too, though.
They,
And college has a lot stricter rules on that. I think
Harbaugh's catching a lot of heat, and potentially could come down with some sanctions on him.
he'll just go to the NFL.
Is that what we think? That
I think he's gonna be in the NFL next year.
If you're not cheating, you're not trying.
I mean,
Landon with
they
the
asked,
fire.
I think Matt Rule, they asked, at Nebraska, he was interviewed about this, and a lot of other coaches were asked about this. He's like, man, everyone's taking everybody's signs. You're trying to get some advantage.
I mean, you either do it on the sidelines or you watch TV.
I think it's that they've had the paper trail where they said this guy was at this game, and they have footage of him just looking at the sideline to steal these signs in certain situations. And
So they're sending these guys the week before.
I mean,
Michigan plays them.
Yeah,
apparently,
going back to the Astros though,
allegedly.
That was
What
active
was-
cheating. That was
they
had
had a
guy watching
camera,
the
a camera watching a camera and banging on trash cans. But the same instance, when a guy's tipping his pitches, everyone's like, "Hey, he's when he's gonna throw the curveball,
that's when you have to change your pitch signs. I mean, that's been in baseball as long as baseball.
If you can see the catcher signs, you're not going to sit there.
But
and watch the
what
signs. Oh, I know what this guy's
level
throwing.
of it seems like we're talking the difference in the cheating where something needs to be done and it's just being a part of the game is the level of effort you go.
Yeah.
That seems to be what, like, so that's all the Astros did. I mean, I'm not, Astros should have their World Series 2017 taken away for all I care. I'm not defending them, but you're giving signs. So I'm sitting here third base, hey, giving you a steal sign. Is there a rule that says, hey, if I bang on a trash can, now you hear it, you know the sign. So,
Or if I just yell out and say, hey, he's stealing, like,
if the second baseman, or not second baseman, a runner on second is watching the catcher and he can see, hey, one is fastball or whatever, and he gives a sign, is there anything wrong with that?
I mean, it happens all the time. Even
Like,
down
I
to
know
the
there's
high
no
school-
rule
down to the high
in the
school
rule
level. They do that, right?
So the fact that they set
I
up a
think it's
camera,
that unwritten rule in sports.
It's like you probably shouldn't do it, but if their signs are easy enough to steal that you can pick it up,
then that's on them.
It's like a battle in between the war. You have to win.
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah,
you can
so-
pick up that, then you win that, and that helps you win overall.
Yeah.
well put. Like if they were going to have your signs
Like,
that easy
if
to
you have a
steal,
runner
You're
on
going to make it that
deserve-
simple.
Yeah.
Then you deserve
If
it.
you have
So-
a runner on second and they're stealing your signs, make a better sequence. Have a sign
So
sequence.
the deal with Michigan, did they just figure something out that other teams didn't, or did they just start doing stuff that other teams knew, like we don't need to mess with that? Having actual paid members of their staff.
Well, I mean, something.
I don't
gets-
understand.
Because
why they
you
don't
send
use
players to
helmet.
everybody sends players to you send scouts and
Yeah.
people to get you, like Texas has play. I don't know who they play next week, but they're eventually going to play TCU later this year. They send people to go watch TCU games and get game plan. But I it's something to do with like, hey man, he just was filming the sideline, getting those signs. So like, I don't know. I didn't know it was very prevalent in college football too, because lots of times you'll hear, Tony Romo or somebody like, oh, hey, the guy said this. I bet this, he said Bob Ross. I bet this is a draw play.
Yeah.
So if you can pick up on that, and okay, I know what that means because I figured it out. I guess it's different than. I feel like whether you film it or not, if you can catch it in a game, it's free play.
Yeah.
Like they did it in a game. They're on national TV. I figured it out. Now, when Bill Belichick was
studying,
when Bill
signs,
Belichick was sending drones, I don't know exactly what he did, but sends drones to their practice field or whatever because they're in town. That's going a little too much.
Yeah.
Or miking up the visitor locker room or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, the easiest thing to do is, okay, if they're gonna send guys to film the sideline and steal signs, put a speaker in the helmet.
Yeah. And that's been voted on,
that
gets voted on, but it's voted down every year in college football.
You see coaches and players, every sport, cover their mouth up when they're talking. Because that's the same thing. They're like, hey, people can read lips. Well, I don't know when that started. I'm sure there was an issue with it at some point where we're going to start doing this.
Probably teams that have professional lip readers on their payroll in dugouts at games and press boxes that look and see if they can see somebody's lips.
No, you're absolutely right. The speakers and helmets in college football absolutely should be a thing. And you can do it with the defensive play caller and the offensive play caller. I think in the NFL they get so many. If you really watch now, you'll see they have a lime green sticker on the back of the helmet on some of them, typically the quarterbacks. And I think you're allowed so many of those helmets on the sideline, and if you notice that, you'll see that. But yeah, give the defensive end and just cut out the rest of this. Teams using signs and using cards and stuff. Yeah, just call the play into their helmet.
So why are we against just every player having something in their helmet and the coach just telling the play, not even huddle up?
I think it's probably like.
And what do they get?
Probably radio frequency messing up.
In the NFL, they're allowed it like up to 10 seconds.
You saw that too. The Patriots, like when you go play New England, hey, our headsets aren't working or whatever.
Yeah, putting radio jammers in the stadium.
It's down to 10 seconds. They can talk to them into the quarterback's ear.
Yeah, something like that. Because they'll point like, hey, I don't.
Yeah, up to 10 seconds. They can continue to talk and tell you. I don't know why you couldn't.
It seems like it'd be easier just to steal that frequency than it would be to.
Well, I don't know if it's a true radio frequency though.
Maybe it's like a walkie-talkie or something. Like, there's technology to pick it up one way or the other. You know, I don't know the level of effort.
We see it in the high school games that we call using the cards, with different pictures and things on it.
And they do that in the NFL.
And a combination of that and sign, hand signals and then even some audible stuff. So they are trying to mix that up to make it more difficult. But honestly,
it's like a lot of it's just random stuff that means nothing. Just like in baseball, you're like, hey, this is steal, but you're not going to just do this. You're going to put all this random stuff in. And if you do that, just for that reason, because they can't steal your signs, because you're not going to do this. Like,
there has to be an indicator.
Yeah. And the same thing, you see the ones like, I think it was fun. There was like a Kim Kardashian on one of the signs. There's like 4 different things. It's an NFL game. But maybe you just need to triple your signs and make most of them mean nothing, and just say, and the players know, hey, if I point to this, that means absolutely nothing, but I'm going to.
No, they'll call a number or have a hand signal that tells you this is the box that we're using that
and
sign.
Then point at a KFC logo on our sign. So then whoever's trying to steal our signs thinks, okay, KFC. What does KFC mean? And then just watch. And then I think, man, I hate to say, well, you just need to have harder signs. If I knew the details of it, like just because I know NCAA doesn't even know all the details of it yet. If they knew, then they would have a decision on what's going to happen with Michigan or Harbaugh, which doesn't matter. Harbaugh's going to go to the NFL the day he's suspended. I think there'll be some sort of suspension, assuming it's more than a couple of games. I think he'll be in the NFL anyway.
Which is going to be. It's going to be sad for Michigan. He's been so good for that program.
I mean, he's been stealing signs, maybe.
I think just him in general, not the wins or the losses, just him being on campus. I think just brought a different
high-profile coach.
It brought back Michigan from the 96, 1996, I think is when I can always remember. That was like those 90. That Michigan was dominant in college football. and he's kind of brought them back to that.
Yeah, for mediocrity to competing every year. I mean, they've been to the college football playoff the last 2 years, beating Ohio State finally. That long drought.
Yeah.
Were you gonna say something, Landon?
Not to take anything away from Harbaugh, but the past 2 years, Michigan's played multiple games without their head coach. So,
Yeah.
I don't know that was really going to affect them.
Landon's dropping bombs this morning. He must be pissed off about something. Like, he's like, yeah, you can steal signs. I don't care. You're a cheater. You're a cheater anyway. Everybody's a cheater. I mean, just like paying players before NIL deals. Everyone's doing it. They just got caught doing it.
I mean, they've been doing it since at least the 80s.
And maybe that's what, you go with SMU, like their main deal is they had the paper trail and they were caught with,
and then with the funny
and
part,
that's with Michigan. Michigan, I mean, maybe everyone's doing it exactly the same. Michigan got caught with the paper
Texas
trail.
A&M skated past that one with that SMU deal because they lost. Was it Eric Dickerson that was going to go? They lost him
After
to
buying him a
SMU,
car.
paid more. Yeah. And they actually skated that one.
I know 20 years later when that documentary comes out, you're like, you bought him a car. Like, okay. Can't do anything about it now. Nobody at A&M is even still there.
Yeah.
But everybody does it.
Yeah.
Like, you don't think he's got offers from every single Southwest Conference school to go there?
Which actually, these NIL deals now actually I think help a lot of that. You take a lot of that off the table of if everyone can do it, everyone can compete at the same level. Obviously, there are still some regulations, but
you can still go out and get your money. I mean,
yeah,
Texas can pay more than North Texas.
Yeah.
Now that there's a legal way to do it, they'll like, hey, but a lot of times they'll play where they want to play. Like, hey, I'm coming from poverty. I need some money, so
yeah.
I'm not worried about
think the
making
even better
$10
part of
million
it-
a year. It's okay making a couple $100,000 or
You're
whatever.
keeping these players longer because they're making just as good or better money than they're going to make going pro. So it's very beneficial for them just to stay in college, and I think it's going to help college football. And it already is, but I think for the future of college football, we're going to continue to see more competitive schools, more competitive play, because guys are going to be willing to stay and bust their ass.
Shador
that school.
Shador Sanders, I can't pronounce his name this morning.
Shador.
Shador Sanders will probably say, like, I know he's kind of been down from where we had him the first few weeks. Not a Heisman candidate anymore. But he can definitely make a ton of money at Colorado. His dad's going to be coaching. Like, why wouldn't you stay there?
Yeah.
Before we were thinking first round pick, but now if he can go and be, a third round pick, you're thinking before you're like, yeah, for sure, I'm going to go get my money. I can get hurt here, but he's going to make more money here.
Yeah.
At Colorado.
This kid drives what, a Rolls Royce Phantom or something?
I think so. I mean, we're
outside
we're
of being like a
saying that
top
we're-
10 pick.
his
You're gonna
dad's
make
Deion
more.
Sanders. That
He's gonna make money. He's gonna make money just because his dad can get him all kinds of NIL deals.
Yeah.
He's got.
But I think the
connections.
same with Caleb Williams. That's been debated whether he's going to come out depending on who's there. But I don't think you debate that on who's there if you're not making enough money already. If you're not making millions in college, I don't know that you debate.
Yeah, I don't
coming
think
out.
anyone's ever. I mean, they'll obviously have their players they want. I mean, their teams they want to play for, and that people joke around like, oh, he doesn't want to play for them. He's not going to come out. I don't know anyone's actually made that decision based solely on that. Like a star QB is going to I don't want to go play for the Cardinals. It's kind of like the knock right now. Is Caleb Williams going to stay so he doesn't have to play for the Cardinals?
Yeah.
It's been a factor, but now it definitely could be a decision. Like they'll say, go make your money, but really your rookie contract, I mean, it's going to be a lot one way or the other, especially if you're number one pick. But all that is like, okay, guaranteed 4 years. What's the minute? $10 million, something around there. You make the same in college and say, hey, let's let another situation pop up.
If Caleb Williams stayed another year, he can make that kind of money. He would be the face of the
At
NCAA
USC,
at USC next season. I mean, he already kind of is, but if he stays another season, another year at USC, he will be the face of the NCAA.
And they're saying a lot of stuff about Arch Manning too when he finally started, which I don't know that they play him. That Ewers is hurt. I think there's a chance, but I think they're still going to sit him. They still want him to have that redshirt year. I still think after 3 years, he's going to the NFL anyway. But they say he's probably going to end up be the first like $20 million college football quarterback.
Wow.
I just saw he just gave a bunch of money away though. Like he donated a bunch of money, like a couple $1 million to a charity.
Oh well, I mean he has.
Yeah, so he'll
money.
probably make that tenfold back then, just for doing that. Just
he
because
already
his
has
name's
money,
out there
yeah.
like that, he's gonna make that money tenfold now.
Like whose money really was that? Like I don't know. He's probably making quite a bit of money already.
Oh, I would think
Being
just
a
his
third-string
name alone.
quarterback. Yeah.
His name alone, people are gonna jump in.
Manning at
capitalize on
Texas,
that.
yeah, he's gonna. I mean, he doesn't have to play a snap, and he's people are gonna give him money. All right, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in this early Saturday morning and bearing with us on our technical issues. Be sure to subscribe, like this video, go to our social media platforms, and like those as well. And you can now hear the leadoff every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. But until next time, guys, I'm Ashton.
I'm Tony.
See you later.